Record, scoot back over. Welcome to today's show of In the Know with CaT Bobino. Today, my extra special guest is Anna Rothschild. She is the creator and host of Gross Science, which is a show for Nova and PBS digital studios. Welcome, Anna, to the show. How are you
Thank you
doing?
so much for having me. I'm doing great.
That's wonderful. So, let's jump right into it. How did you become the host and creator of Gross Science?
Sure. How far back would you like me to start?
I think why don't we just start with what is gross science?
Sure. So, Grow Science is a YouTube channel from Nova and PBS Digital Studios that explores the sort of bizarre, slimy, creepy world of science. And it's a weekly show. So, every week I have a new video on everything from parasites to, ways to use urine to make the world a better place.
Ways to make urine a better place. Okay, well, see, that's one of those videos that I'll definitely have to watch and understand how that works. But yeah, so how about we go back to the beginning of the show and how it was created and how you created it?
Sure. So I was working as a digital producer at Nova. And basically, my job used to be creating web videos for this like 40-plus-year-old broadcast television show. And the videos could be about any science topic, but I was always really especially interested in topics that were kind of gross, and that really stems all the way back from my early childhood. And I'd made a few videos on stuff that was a little bit gross for Nova, and they did pretty well. So when the opportunity came up to pitch my own original hosted YouTube series, um, I pitched Gross Science, and it launched about a year ago, a little over a year ago, so last April, um, and we've been going strong ever since.
So that's very interesting. So you've always had this, I guess, love affair with what is we would consider gross, but that is definitely okay. But it also has a science background. So could you tell us more about your science background?
Sure. So I studied biology as an undergraduate in college. I was pretty sure I wanted to be some sort of evolutionary biologist. And I ended up getting a fellowship in college, working with a curator at the American Museum of Natural History in New York, studying the evolution of parasites, specifically lizard malaria, of all things.
Okay.
And so after I graduated, I worked for a few years in that same lab, doing a whole variety of things. I did a lot of conservation biology work.
Mm-hmm.
So I studied everything from humpback whales to the sturgeon that produce caviar. And I was looking at these organisms' genes to help try to protect them and conserve them. Uh, but at a certain point, as much as I loved my job and loved all of the people who I worked with and was just super inspired by everyone I got to, work with all day, I realized I was much more excited talking about what I was doing and explaining what I was doing to other people than I was actually sitting there with like a pipetter moving fluids around. And that is like, some people are totally, totally into that. But that just wasn't what brought me the most joy. Um, so I ended up kind of switching gears, and I ended up going to graduate school for science journalism, and that was the beginning of my path towards being a science communicator rather than a scientist.
Okay. Yeah. So I totally understand switching pathways because I too have an interest in talking about science and sharing what science is versus being in a lab day in and day out, which is fine for those who like doing it, but I know it just wasn't my forte.
Right. I
So,
mean, deeply, deeply important work.
yes,
And
very much so. Very much so. So, how did you go from school in science journalism to working with Nova and PBS?
Sure. So I knew through graduate school that I wanted to do something in the kind of broadcast world, whether it was making web videos or making audio pieces or, working on full-length documentaries. I just knew that broadcast versus actually print journalism was something I was much more excited about. Um, and I managed to finagle an informational interview with the head of Nova uh, soon after I graduated from my grad program. And there wasn't a job open, but she recommended that I try reaching out to some independent producers who produce documentaries for Nova and see if they needed any freelance help. So I did that for a while. And she also told me that there maybe would be a job opening up in the digital department at some point in the future. So I freelanced for quite a while and then basically wrote to my current boss at Nova, so the head of the digital team, like every month for like 8 months or something. Like I could not have been a more annoying person. I was just like the most annoying human being on the planet. Just being like, hi, I'm still interested. Hello, how are you? I'm still interested. And finally, when a job did become available, I got it, which was great.
Well, that
Um,
is wonderful. So that is, I think, something key to remind people that if it's something that you really, really want, you might have to bug people about it and be in their face. Show them
yeah,
that this is really, that you're really excited about, you really want it, which is awesome.
exactly. And I have to say that now, like now that I'm working on a show where I'm producing an episode every single week, I'm so grateful when people send me a follow-up email to their original email because sometimes I just forget to
Right.
write back and I feel terrible, but I'm always really grateful to have that follow-up email being like, "Oh yeah, this is really important. I'm going to write back to you right now."
Well, that's awesome. And so, when you finally got that chance to work for the digital studios and create your first program for girls' science, how was that? Like, how was it coming up with your very own program and then finding that right thing to talk about the very first episode?
Right. So, it was kind of interesting because when I first pitched the series, I pitched a few pilot episodes. That actually that was before PBS Digital Studios even had any involvement with the project. So for the first pilot episode, I just had this story that I'd like loved forever for like since I'd heard it years and years before. And it was about this parasite that eats off a fish's tongue and then becomes its tongue.
I've heard of that parasite.
Yeah. So so I made a video about that and I was really pleased that it did quite well. So it was sort of like a proof of concept for the show. But then when I like got PBS Digital Studios involved, which was amazing, um, I had all of these ideas, and we really sort of like talked about the best ones to launch with. So we actually launched with three ideas at first to kind of see what people might be interested in, and one of them was related to health. Or actually, two of them were sort of health related. One was directly about the human body. Another
Mm-hmm.
one was about a parasite that infects humans, and then a third one was about um, sea cucumbers and how they can basically like they can shoot out their guts and then regenerate their entire like gut, like which is kind of amazing and magical.
That is all in on its own is pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So then, did you air all three of those and then figure out which ones did the best?
Yeah, so I'd made a whole I'd sort of had like a bit of a backlog of episodes, and those are the three that I first went with. People gravitated towards the health stories,
Mm-hmm.
but I still love my natural history stories. They have a very special place in my heart, and I definitely like sprinkle those into the show um, all the time too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I definitely watched the show, so I've seen quite a few of those episodes. And it's really a great show to watch, and it's very informative, which is really awesome to me because I'm a science nerd and I like to learn something new every day. And I did really like the fish tongue, parasite tongue one. That was really cool. But
Thanks so much, Kat.
so let's kind of go back a little bit more in your history and talk about when you first realized that you were into science.
Sure. So I fell in love with science when I was quite young. I When I was in sixth grade, I took, I think, well, at least in New York where I was living, uh, biology was the sixth grade science curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this amazing, amazing science teacher at that time, and we did all of these like kind of gross experiments in class, like dissecting owl pellets and like culturing our own bacteria to make yogurt, which is sounds delicious, but at the same time, there's this element of kind of grossness to it also. You know, you don't
Mm-hmm.
tend to think we tend to spend a lot of our lives trying to protect ourselves from bacteria, and yet you're also eating it every time you eat yogurt. So um, I got to do all of these experiments that had a little bit of a gross edge, and that really hooked me. And then at around the same time, my parents also bought me a slime chemistry set, which was like completely a game changer for me. And I was convinced that I wanted to be a biochemist because somehow, I don't know where I got this idea, but somehow I decided that biochemists got to make slime all day. And that was the job for me.
So you were very interested in creating slime for the world
Oh
to
yes,
use.
that was like a big goal of mine as a young person, and kind of still is.
I love it. I love it. And I that takes me back because I remember being, I think, in middle school, dissecting owl pellets. Which
Yes.
I don't know if everyone's ever dissected an owl pellet, but that is one of the most amazing things to dissect, in my opinion.
Yeah, if and just like in case you guys don't know what it is, basically like owls like when they eat stuff, they'll just like eat a mouse like whole basically. And then they pretty much will cough up these pellets that have all of the undigested parts of their meals in it. So you'll like get this little like ball. It kind of looks like a piece of poop or something.
It kind of it's like a poop mixed with a hairball.
Yeah, it's like a mix. Yeah,
That's what
exactly.
that's what it looks like.
But you can sort of pull them apart and then you can find like all of the bones from whatever the owl ate, which was as like a kid just like the most mind-blowing thing to me.
It was for me too. Like I thought that was amazing. So, sixth grade biology is kind of where you started, and
Yeah,
then learning about slime, and I'm take it you still loved science on through high school. So
I
all of those
did.
classes and all
Yep.
your teachers.
Hmm. I should mention also actually that my mother teaches at MIT. Though weirdly, she's a theater professor. She actually has nothing to do with the sciences at MIT. But I think that that might have, from a pretty early age, like given me at least a feeling like science was some like a cool thing that people did. Like when I would, come up for like take your daughter to work day and stuff, like she would drop me off in her friends' labs. And
Oh, that's
so I
cool.
got this like fun firsthand experience of like seeing scientists at work in labs. And as a young person, it just seemed really cool to me.
Yeah, I think that early exposure like that is really amazing for some kids, and I mean, I know a lot of kids don't get that. I didn't get that. I wasn't dropped off at MIT labs, but
Yeah.
you know, I
Not
still
many people are.
but I still developed a great love and appreciation for science. So I think that's really cool. So, do you credit your mom for helping you open your eyes to science, or your sixth grade teacher, or is there anyone who really sticks out for
My
this?
sixth grade biology teacher was like hugely influential. I mean, my mother and my father, honestly, both of them really like they always like encouraged me to be curious about the world. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the fact that my mom had that job just made science something that seemed like socially acceptable. Do you know what I mean? Like it
Mm-hmm.
seemed like a pretty cool career path. But my sixth grade biology teacher really helped me find that love of science, helped me really see it for the first time. And then just like my own weird explorations, like exploring the world and playing with a slime chemistry set and, you know, going on nature walks. Like those things also just had an impact on me from a pretty young age.
Well, that's really cool. I'm glad that all this stuff impacted you, and so you went on to college to study biology. And did you think that you would be a biochemist making slime after undergrad, or were you were you convinced that you would be doing something else after undergrad?
No, I definitely thought I would be doing something else. Though I did love biochemistry in college. Um,
Okay.
who am
Yeah,
I?
no, no, no. There's plenty of people who like biochem. I mean, I am not one of them because chemistry was just like over my head, but I still passed, thank God. But you do get an opportunity to have this chance to study what you like, which is biochem, and then you went on to do science journalism. And if people haven't watched your show, the show has a lot of graphics in there. Do you do the graphics yourself and create those graphics, or do you have help with that?
Yeah, so I do them pretty much all myself. I will say that I have some amazing interns every semester who help me with every part of the show, and I would be nowhere without them. They're hugely helpful. But I'm basically the person doing everything um, for the most part. So yeah, I do the animations myself, the illustrations myself for the most part. And honestly, like I really don't have any sort of art background whatsoever. Like I said, like I was studying to be like an evolutionary biologist in
Mm-hmm.
college. I really or a parasitologist. Like I really was not taking many art classes in college at all. Um, so it's kind of funny when I got to Nova, I wanted to make um, I wanted to make like really, really beautiful videos.
Mm-hmm.
That was, my goal. And I realized that well, I thought that I wasn't going to be able to do it because I didn't have art skills. And I actually like ran over to my mother's house one day and burst into tears and was just like, "Mom, I'm never going to be able to do this. I I'm not artistic enough. Like I know how to tell the stories, but I'm never going to be able to bring my visions to life." And my mother was just like, "Oh, Anna, like have you even tried? Like have you even tried like painting something or like making a collage or anything like that?" It was just like, "No." So, I like got some art supplies and started trying to animate stuff and illustrate stuff. And you know, the first things I made didn't look great. Like they looked pretty terrible. But they also didn't look as bad as I thought, you know? And as I kind of went on and started illustrating more and animating more, I never quite made what I was hoping to make, but
Mm-hmm.
I did my own personal from that. And from those like failures, my own personal style emerged. And now like I love what I get to make and don't feel held back by my artistic skills at all.
Yeah.
Um,
That's really cool. And so, yeah, because that was going to be my next question was, did you learn some of those animation skills and all that in science journalism when you graduate degree?
so I definitely took a couple classes in like video editing in
Mm-hmm.
graduate school. They were sort of part of other classes that were more writing focused. There wasn't like just one specific, if I'm remembering correctly, I don't think there was one specific like video class,
Mm-hmm.
but I definitely got to practice multimedia skills, whether it was uh, animating or editing video or doing some audio stuff like in graduate school. But the thing I would tell anyone is that learning how to like edit or animate, those are tools, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Learning how to use like Premiere, After Effects or whatever, those are tools that you can learn how to use. What you really need is to have a vision and to be able to tell a good story. And you can like Google your way through figuring out how to learn those tools, but what you first need, the first like key ingredient is the story and the vision for how you're going to bring it to life.
Okay. So that's really cool. And before we run out of time, I want to step out of the science realm and talk about what you do outside of work. So, like the different types of hobbies you might have, things that you do that's not necessarily going towards science. And the reason I ask that is because I know there's a lot of people, especially a lot of students, who think that the science world is just one bubble, and people in that world do not come out of the bubble. They are only science. And so I just wanted to ask you, what do you do outside of work? for
Sure.
fun?
Well, I am. This is so goofy. I'm a knitter. I
Oh,
knit.
okay.
I also love like playing board games. That's a
Okay.
big thing I love to do with my friends.
Any board game
And
in particular?
well, this is actually not a board game; it's a card game. I love Dominion.
Okay.
I love Pandemic. Those are two games that I especially love these days.
Okay.
Oh, there's a new one called Dragoon that I'm kind of obsessed with, where you like play you're a dragon trying to steal other dragons' gold. It's
Okay.
awesome. um, I'm learning how to fly fish right now,
Hmm.
which is kind of fun. And
Where
just
where in your area do you fly fish?
so I live in Massachusetts, and out in Western Mass, there's a really great place to go fly fishing. So I've
Okay.
been learning how to do that recently. And yeah, that seems like a nice, well-rounded um,
It,
list of my interests.
yeah, it does. And so, I mean, basically, you do get out the house. You're not a
Yeah,
shadow who lives in a lab coat who doesn't.
no, I try to spend as much time outdoors as possible.
That's good. Yeah, I do too. I love like hiking and just about any water sport is something that I would be interested in. But like being outdoors is awesome. And I think, do you ever like, get some of your inspirations for your stories when you're out there outdoors?
Oh my gosh, all yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
being outside is just like super important for my brain and my health generally. So, and like story generation for sure.
right. And by the way, do you have anything there that you can show the audience that you use in particular for making the shows?
Yeah, sure. So, here's my very messy set of watercolors that I threw in my bag earlier today. So actually, the watercolors are everywhere
Uh oh.
and the paint stains are everywhere. But this artist at work. This is my watercolor palette.
So basically,
Um,
that's your scientist with art supplies. Yes,
yes,
your art will work.
exactly. I use oh, and then like magazines are like hugely important. They're a hugely important tool for me because I make a lot of my animations with using collage.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll pull like patterns from magazines and collage with those, which is really fun. Um, and then I use a Canon 70D to shoot most of my stuff.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
So
and
so
that's about it.
I know that in this day and age when everyone has cameras pretty much on their phone, um, you're not in a studio with these huge cameras and all these tripods and all these people making this program. It seems like for the most part you do it by yourself, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have, um, as I said, my wonderful
Yes.
interns who basically like stand with the camera and make sure that I'm focused properly, that I don't sound like an idiot when I'm saying something. Like they're just like, Anna, like just say that again. um, uh, yeah, and right. But for the most part, like I actually film at home a lot,
Oh.
and I do use lights, whether I'm filming in a studio. My studio is really just like an empty room with a mic and a light, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I do use lights just because I've found that even at home, lighting is like it's just hugely important.
Mm-hmm.
But you can get super cheap lights these days. Like you don't need to invest, even if you're like making a YouTube series at home, you don't need to invest in something really expensive to make like quality looking stuff.
Okay. Yeah. So that's really good advice for people to know. And I've seen the show, and hopefully other people will go and watch it after this. But it looks like you're on a green screen. So is your room green, painted green, or do you have like, or
So
is it
actually,
something else?
surprisingly, I shoot very few episodes in front of a green screen. Some of them I do, but just like when it's necessary to have stuff behind me. But a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the time, I'm either shooting in just a white room,
Mm-hmm.
And when I need to, sort of like rotoscoping around myself to put something behind me, like in the shot.
Uh-huh.
Um, though I don't even do that very often these days. Uh, or I just shoot like in my living room in front of the mantle for a more casual, at home feel.
Well, that's really cool then. So right at home in front of the mantle sounds like a dream job. Be able
Talking
to
about gross stuff.
be able to shoot there. So we're almost out of time. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity to let the audience know either about your show, how to get in touch with you, and if there's anything you want to tell, especially students, about if they're having interest in science journalism, like something that they can do for that.
Sure. So definitely check out the show, youtube.com/slash gross science show. And my email address is in the about section. So if you have any questions, please, please, please email me. I'm really always happy to answer your questions. And if I don't write back to you right away, send a follow-up email. um, but what I would say is that if you have an interest in science journalism, first of all, there are so many ways to self publish these days, whether it's on YouTube or podcasting or anything like that. So just go for it because the barriers to entry are really, really low. And in all likelihood, you already have enough technology to make this happen. Your smartphone, if you have a smartphone, the camera and the mic are good enough for your first few episodes. That's going to be fine just to start experimenting and playing around with stuff. Um, so I would just say do it. What I will say is that to be a good science journalist, fact checking is hugely important. And that's, I think, a thing that you really want to get comfortable with early, early, early on. And what I'll tell you is that a lot of scientists are going to be so happy to have their work, talked about in the media. And so don't ever be afraid to write to a scientist and just say, "Hi, I have a few questions about, this paper that you published. Do you mind just spending 10 minutes with me tops talking to me about this video I'm making? Because, you know, like I really want to get it right and I want to make you look great." Um, so yeah, I don't want to misrepresent you, I should say.
Yeah.
Because you're not always making people look great. You don't, you just don't want to misrepresent anyone. And so that's the one tip I'll give you. Otherwise, you probably have everything you need to start making videos or audio pieces, in your pocket right now.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Anna, for being a part of the show today. I really appreciate it coming all the way from the East Coast and letting us know on the West Coast everything that you're doing. So, thank you very much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on, Kat.
Oh, no problem. And to the audience, thank you again for being a part of today's episode. This will also be shared online. So make sure you go to YouTube or to Channel 29 to watch. And if whenever you have time, because I know you'll have time, go watch Gross Science on YouTube. You will learn something, and it's very, very entertaining. So until next time, thank you. All right, now I roll over here and push stop.